For 5 weeks, Jonathan and Sarah lived the same nightmare every single day. Their 5-year-old daughter, Emma, had vanished without a trace. No witnesses, no clues, no hope. Police searched the woods, the neighborhood, every nearby road. Nothing. Emma was gone. As if the earth had swallowed her whole. The police had already given up hope. But on the 7th day, something strange happened. At exactly 7:14 p.m., a loud scratching noise echoed at their living room window. When Jonathan rushed forward, he froze. A police dog, a German shepherd named Atlas, stood outside, paws pressed against the glass, eyes locked with unnerving intensity. He didn't bark. He didn't move. He just stared as if trying to tell them something. The next day, the dog returned. And the next and the next. Every day 7:14 p.m. tapping, scratching, whining. Nobody understood why, but when the truth finally came out, Jonathan and Sarah would turn pale and wish they had listened sooner. Stay with us because this story will leave you shocked. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The evening their daughter vanished was supposed to be ordinary. A calm Thursday, the kind where nothing dramatic ever happens. At least that's what Jonathan and Sarah believed as they watched Emma color on the living room floor. The sun outside was soft and golden, slipping behind the tall maple trees, casting warm light across Emma's tiny hands as she carefully filled in the wings of a cartoon butterfly. She hummed while she worked, kicking her little legs in that carefree way only a 5-year-old could. Jonathan remembered thinking how peaceful everything felt. No warnings, no strange sounds, no sign that in less than an hour their entire world would collapse. Emma asked if she could play in the yard for just 5 minutes. Sarah hesitated, but eventually agreed. She could see the yard through the kitchen window. Emma slipped on her shoes, grabbed her favorite stuffed bunny, and ran outside with a giggle. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Sarah glanced out again, and froze. The yard was empty. At first, she assumed Emma had simply wandered to the swing set or behind the bushes. She stepped outside, calling her name lightly, expecting the little girl to peek out, laughing as she usually did when she played hide-and-seek. But there was no giggle, no footsteps, no movement. Emma, she called again louder now, her voice cracking. Jonathan joined her search, checking the back fence, the garden, the shed. Each second stretched longer, heavier, more suffocating. The stuffed bunny lay near the back gate, face down in the grass. Emma never left it behind, ever. That's when panic hit. Jonathan dialed 911 with shaking hands. Sarah ran from house to house, begging neighbors to check their yards. Within minutes, police cars lined the street. Officers spread out with flashlights, knocking on doors, calling Emma's name into the growing darkness. A K-9 unit arrived. Atlas, a powerful German shepherd trained to track missing children. He sniffed Emma's bunny, then pulled forward with determination, tugging the handler into the woods behind their home. Jonathan and Sarah followed, hearts pounding, praying. Every rustle of leaves made Sarah jump. Every snapped twig felt like a warning. Atlas barked sharply, then followed a trail deeper into the trees until suddenly he stopped, wed, circled, and lost the scent. Just like that, the trail died, and so did the last certainty Jonathan and Sarah had left. That night, the world grew colder, quieter, terrifyingly empty. Their daughter, their little girl who loved butterflies and bedtime stories, was gone, and no one knew where she was. Morning arrived with a cold, heavy silence, the kind that settles deep into a person's bones. Jonathan and Sarah had barely slept. Each time Sarah closed her eyes, she saw Emma's stuffed bunny lying in the grass. Each time Jonathan blinked, he saw the moment Atlas lost the scent. The world outside felt unfamiliar, as if the night had swallowed something it refused to return. By dawn, their street had turned into a command center. Police cars lined both sides of the road. Yellow incident markers dotted the yard. Radios crackled with clipped instructions. Volunteers began gathering, some carrying flashlights, others with printed maps and bottled water. Atlas stood at the center of it all, tail stiff, ears high, pacing with a restless urgency. His handler, a seasoned officer named Martinez, kept trying to redirect him. But Atlas wasn't acting like a typical working dog. He wasn't calm. He wasn't focused. He kept pulling toward the woods, barking at shadows, nose pressed to the earth as if he knew the answer was there, hidden just beyond human understanding. Search teams fanned out across the neighborhood. Some searched the creek bed. Others walked through thick brush, calling Emma's name until their voices cracked. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning the forest canopy. Helicopters circled slowly. Spotlight beams cutting through the early morning fog. Hours passed. Not a single trace, not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a sign of struggle, just nothing. Every so often, an officer approached Jonathan and Sarah with updates. Each one more discouraging than the last. "We're expanding the search grid. No signs yet, but we're covering all ground. We're bringing in additional units." Sarah clung to Jonathan's arm, tears streaking down her face. "She's just 5, she whispered over and over as if reminding the universe of something it had forgotten. She's just 5. Meanwhile, the Atlas kept returning to the same spot in the woods, circling, whining, digging at the ground as though desperate to uncover something no one else could see. Officer Martinez grew increasingly puzzled. "He's never done this before," he muttered to Jonathan. "He's acting like she's here or was here recently." But every time, every attempt, every direction, the trail evaporated like someone had erased it. By late afternoon, the search team regrouped, exhausted and frustrated. Sarah's legs trembled as she sank to the porch steps, staring blankly at the woods. Jonathan knelt beside her, holding her hands tightly. The day had been long, brutal, and despite an army of people searching, they were no closer to finding their daughter than the night before. The silence felt cruel. But Atlas wasn't done searching. Not even close. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Every corner echoed with memories of Emma. Her crayons scattered on the coffee table. Her tiny sock still folded on the armchair. Her favorite storybook lying open on the rug as if she might run back at any moment to finish the page. But she didn't. She wasn't there. And the silence was unbearable. Sarah walked through the hallway slowly, fingertips brushing the wall as if steadying herself. She paused at Emma's bedroom door. It was slightly ajar, just the way Emma left it every morning. Sarah pushed it open, and the weight of the room hit her like a punch. The little pink blanket, the half-built puzzle on the floor. The small shoes lined up neatly like Emma always arranged them, everything still, everything waiting. Her heart cracked again. She picked up a small stuffed bear from the bed, the one Emma hugged every night, and clutched it to her chest. Its fur smelled faintly of Emma's strawberry shampoo. Sarah's knees buckled and she sank to the floor, sobbing into the silent room. Downstairs, Jonathan sat on the couch, staring at the front door as if expecting the handle to turn. He kept replying the last words Emma said. Just 5 minutes, Daddy. Please. He hadn't said no. He hadn't gone outside with her. That thought cut deeper than anything else. Every so often, the police radio in the living room crackled with updates. Search team returning. No new findings. Drone unit scanning new grid. Additional volunteers arriving. Every message felt like another door closing. Officer Martinez stopped by that afternoon. Atlas trotting beside him. The German shepherd's fur was dusty, his paws muddy from hours of searching. Martinez spoke gently. We're doing everything we can. We haven't given up. Jonathan nodded numbly, though the words barely reached him. Atlas sat in front of Sarah, watching her with an unsettling intensity, his ears tilted forward, nose twitching, tail stiff. He wasn't calm, not like a tired search dog should be. Sarah lifted her tear-filled eyes to meet his. For a moment, the dog let out a quiet whine. Deep, almost mournful. It made Sarah's heart tremble. That night, the house grew colder. Sarah left Emma's bedroom door wide open, unable to bring herself to close it. A small nightlight glowed softly, casting warm light onto the empty bed. Jonathan sat awake long after midnight, staring at the forest outside. What if we never see her again, he whispered, voice cracking. Sarah squeezed his hand. We will, she said. Though even she didn't believe her own words. But outside, hidden in the shadows, Atlas's silhouette appeared for a brief moment. Watching their house, waiting. Something was beginning. Something none of them understood yet. It happened exactly 7 days after Emma disappeared. The evening air was still unnaturally quiet, as if the world had paused out of respect for the family's grief. Jonathan sat on the couch, staring blankly at the muted TV while Sarah rested her head against his shoulder, her eyes lifeless from a week of heartbreak. Then a sudden sharp tap against the living room window shattered the silence. Sarah jolted upright. Jonathan turned his head, blinking in confusion. Tap, tap, scratch. It wasn't the kind of sound you ignore. It was deliberate, urgent. Jonathan stood slowly and walked toward the window. As he pulled the curtain aside, he stumbled back in shock. A German Shepherd Atlas. The police K9 stood on his hind legs, paws pressed against the glass, his eyes wide and burning with a strange, fierce intensity. His breath fogged the window as he stared straight at Jonathan, tail stiff, muscles tense. He wasn't barking. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't acting like a dog at all. He was trying to get their attention. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. Why? Why is he here? She whispered. Atlas was normally with Officer Martinez miles away at the police station. Another sharp scratch pierced the air, his claws dragging down the glass. Not random, not accidental, purposeful. Jonathan slowly unlatched the window and opened it slightly. Atlas, what are you doing here, boy? He murmured. The moment he cracked the window open, Atlas shoved his nose through the gap, whining desperately. His ears were pinned back, eyes flicking from Jonathan to the dark woods behind the house, as if urging him to look. That's when flashing blue and red lights pulled up outside. Officer Martinez rushed over, panting. I'm so sorry. He got loose from the unit again, bolted straight here. He clipped the leash onto Atlas's harness, but the dog resisted, growling low. Not at Martinez, but at something behind the house. Jonathan stepped outside, heart thudding. Why would he come here? He asked quietly. Martinez shook his head. I don't know. He's been acting strange ever since the search. Atlas barked sharply, jerking the leash toward the woods. His whole body strained, desperate, frantic. It wasn't normal. It wasn't instinct. It was like he was pleading. Sarah stepped closer, voice trembling. "Do you think he smells her?" Officer Martinez hesitated before answering. "I don't know." But Atlas barked again, loud, aggressive, paws slamming against the porch. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't confused. He was trying to tell them something. Something they were not ready to hear. The next day, at the exact same time, 7:14 p.m., the sound came again. Tap, tap, scratch. Sarah and Jonathan froze. Their eyes met, fear flickering between them. Slowly, almost unwillingly, Jonathan walked toward the window and pulled aside the curtain. Atlas was there again, standing in the exact same position as the night before, paws pressed firmly against the glass, breath misting the window, eyes burning with urgency. Sarah whispered, "Oh my God, he came back." Jonathan opened the window an inch. Atlas immediately shoved his nose through, whining louder this time. Tail stiff and unmoving. He wasn't just visiting. He wasn't being friendly. His behavior was sharp, intentional, almost desperate. Before they could react, headlights flashed outside. Officer Martinez jogged up the driveway, breathless and frustrated. "I swear this dog has never behaved like this," he said. "Bolted off again the moment I turned my back. Why would he come to our house?" Sarah asked, voice trembling. Martinez sighed heavily. "I'm not sure anymore. He's not following normal patterns." Atlas barked sharply, pulling at the leash as Martinez tried to secure him. His nails scraped the concrete, tugging toward the woods behind the house, the same place where the trail had vanished a week ago. Jonathan felt his stomach twist. "He keeps looking back there like he's trying to show us something." Martinez hesitated. "I'll bring him to the woods again tomorrow. Maybe he's picking up a new scent." But Atlas growled. Not at Martinez, not at the house, but toward the forest, as if warning them, as if begging them. That night, Sarah barely slept. She kept hearing the tapping over and over, seeing Atlas's eyes staring through the window like a silent message. Jonathan lay awake, too, staring at the ceiling, feeling something he couldn't explain. On the third night, it happened again. 7:14 p.m. Tap, tap, scratch. Atlas stood there with mud on his paws this time, panning harder, eyes wild. When Jonathan opened the window, Atlas pressed something against the glass. Something small and dirty. A torn piece of pink cloth. Sarah gasped. "That looks like I know," Jonathan whispered. They called the police immediately. Officers arrived, examined the cloth, and shook their heads. "It's not enough to confirm anything. These woods have debris everywhere." But Atlas barked with a fury that made everyone jump. His entire body trembling with urgency. The officers dismissed it as stress. Jonathan and Sarah didn't. Something was happening. Something growing stronger, and Atlas was the only one trying to tell them. By the fourth day, Atlas's visits were no longer surprising, but they were getting worse. The first time, he tapped on the window. The second and third time, he scratched and whined. But on the fourth night, he arrived running. Jonathan and Sarah heard him before they saw him. Heavy paws pounding against the porch, urgent barks shaking the quiet evening air. When Jonathan rushed to the window, Atlas was already there, standing on his hind legs, slamming both paws against the glass with frantic determination. Sarah clutched her chest. Something's wrong. He's acting like the house is on fire. Jonathan threw open the door and Atlas burst inside, ignoring commands, ignoring Martinez's distant shouts as he jogged up the driveway. The dog ran straight toward Emma's bedroom, skidding across the hallway floor. Sarah gasped and followed him. Atlas thrust his nose into Emma's room, sniffing wildly. He whined. Long, mournful, heart-wrenching, then looked back at Sarah with pleading eyes. It wasn't random behavior. It wasn't confusion. It was communication. Officer Martinez finally caught up, breathless. I don't know what's gotten into him. He broke out of his kennel this time. Atlas ignored him entirely. Instead, he trotted back to the front door, nudging it repeatedly with his head. Then he ran outside, circled the house, and returned to the window, feet muddy, fur bristled, pressing something against the glass again. A small object, a torn shoelace, pink, frayed, little. Sarah's breath caught. That looks like Emma's sneaker lace. Martinez examined it. We aren't sure. It's similar to many brands. Atlas growled, an uncharacteristic sharp sound that made everyone stiffen. He wasn't growling at the lace. He was growling at the dismissal. Jonathan crouched in front of him. Atlas, where did you find this? His voice cracked. Atlas immediately spun around and sprinted toward the back fence, barking aggressively as if urging them to follow. His body language was clear. He wanted them to come. Now. But when Martinez tried to follow him, Atlas stepped in front of Jonathan instead, blocking him, nudging him, insisting he was the one who needed to follow. Why me? Jonathan whispered under his breath. Atlas pawed at the ground, whining desperately, then ran a few steps toward the woods and looked back. Sarah's hands trembled. He's leading you. He knows something. But the woods were dark, dangerous. The trail was dead. The police had found nothing. And still, Atlas barked again, furious, frantic, almost broken. He wasn't giving up. Something out there waited for them. Something he could smell, but they couldn't see. Sarah tried to stay strong for Jonathan, for the police, for herself, but most of all for Emma. Yet every minute that passed, every night the clock struck 7:14 p.m. Every time Atlas returned, pounding on their window like a messenger from a nightmare, something inside her cracked a little more. On the fifth night, she couldn't hold herself together any longer. She sat on the edge of Emma's bed, clutching a tiny pink sweater, one Emma insisted on wearing even in summer. Sarah held it against her chest, breathing in the faint scent of bubblegum shampoo, still clinging to the fabric. Her voice broke into broken whispers. Baby, where are you? Mama's right here. Please come home. Jonathan stood silently in the doorway, watching her tremble, powerless to ease her pain. He wanted to speak, comfort her, hold her, but words felt meaningless now. Everything felt meaningless. Then the sound came. Tap, tap, scratch. Sarah's head snapped up. Her face drained of color. No, not again, she whispered. But Atlas was there, silhouette framed in the night, paws scraping the glass with fierce urgency. His eyes burned with something unmistakable, desperation. Sarah stumbled downstairs, tears streaming, voice trembling. Why does he keep coming here? What does he want from us? Jonathan opened the window slightly. Atlas didn't shove his nose through this time. He barked at Sarah. Not at Jonathan, not at the woods, at her. He barked again, high-pitched, frantic, then pressed both paws firmly against the glass as if demanding she come closer. Sarah collapsed onto her knees, sobbing. "I don't know what you're trying to say. I don't know how to help you." Atlas's entire body reacted. Suddenly, he let out a long, broken whine. One that didn't sound like a dog at all. It was raw, pained, urgent. His ears tilted back, tail lowered, body trembling with emotion. Then he pressed his forehead against the window. Soft, slow, sad. Sarah pressed her palm against the same spot on the glass, tears dripping onto her wrist. "It's my fault," she whispered through sobs. "If I had gone outside with her, if I had just watched her, she wouldn't be gone. She wouldn't." Atlas barked loudly once, sharply cutting herself blame like a blade as if saying, "Stop. Don't say that. I know something you don't." He spun around, ran to the porch, then sprinted toward the woods, only to stop halfway, and look back at her. Not Jonathan. Her. Sarah wiped her tears, heart pounding. Atlas barked again, short and urgent. He wasn't asking anymore. He was pleading. Sarah stood slowly, staring into the dark woods. Maybe, just maybe, the dog wasn't crying for help. Maybe he was telling her Emma was still alive. The sixth night was different. Atlas didn't just tap on the window. Didn't bring an object. Didn't bark for attention. He brought something else. A message. 7:14 p.m. Right on time. Jonathan closed his eyes when he heard the familiar tapping. Sarah stood frozen by the kitchen counter, afraid to even look. But Atlas didn't tap gently tonight. He slammed both paws against the glass so hard that a picture frame on the wall rattled. His breath fogged the window as he dragged his muddy paws downward in long streak lines. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Sarah stepped closer, confusion mixing with fear. Why is he doing that? Atlas paused, staring intensely at them. Then he did it again. Same lines, same shape. Jonathan squinted. At first, it was just mud, just random smears. But as Atlas repeated the motion, pressing and dragging his paw across the glass with stunning precision, Sarah felt her heart stop. "Jonathan, look." He leaned in, and his face drained of color. The muddy streaks weren't random. They formed two slanted lines on the left, a gap, then one long downward streak on the right. 2, 1. 21, Sarah whispered. "That's a number." Atlas barked sharply once, as if confirming it. Jonathan's voice trembled. "But what does 21 mean?" Atlas scratched again. Left side twice, right side once. Repeating the pattern with unnerving determination. He wasn't drawing. He was directing. Sarah wiped her eyes and stared harder. What if it's, a place? A direction? Atlas ran off the porch, circled the side of the house, then returned to the window, pressing his muddy paw against the glass at the same angle. Sarah gasped. "Jonathan, what if he's marking a direction, like a turn, a path?" Jonathan swallowed, fear creeping up his spine. 2 steps left, 1 step right. They both looked toward the woods. Atlas barked again, loud, urgent, then sprinted toward the tree and, turning left twice, then right once before stopping and staring back. Jonathan's breath caught. "He's showing us the route." Officer Martinez arrived just in time to see Atlas's last directional turn. "What is he doing now?" Martinez muttered. Sarah pointed at the muddy marks. "He's trying to lead us somewhere." Martinez stared at the dog, then the window, then the woods. Atlas repeated the exact pattern again, this time barking between every motion, forcing them to understand. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What if this is where the trail actually starts? Atlas growled softly, a sound of affirmation. Jonathan grabbed his flashlight. Sarah reached for her coat. Atlas turned, ready. The message was clear. The numbers weren't numbers. The marks weren't random. They were a map, a path, a clue hidden in plain sight, and Atlas was done waiting. The forest at night looked like a wall of blackness, silent, vast, and unforgiving. No wind, no moonlight, just shadows standing impossibly still. Jonathan hesitated at the tree-in. Sarah, maybe we should wait for the police. But before she could answer, Atlas sprinted ahead, stopping just far enough to remain visible. He turned back sharply and barked twice, echoing through the still air. His tail was stiff, his stance urgent. Sarah's voice trembled. Jonathan, he's been trying to show us this for days. If this leads to her, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Jonathan took a deep breath and raised his flashlight. We follow him. Atlas wasted no time. He moved fast, too fast for a normal stroll, but slow enough that they could keep up. Every few seconds, he'd stop, glance back, and bark as if urging them not to fall behind. 2 steps left, 1 step right, just like the muddy markings. The deeper they went, the heavier the air felt, like the forest was holding its breath. Twigs snapped under their feet and branches brushed their shoulders as Atlas led them down a narrow, overgrown path none of the search teams had checked. Sarah's heart pounded louder than her footsteps. Why didn't anyone search this part? Jonathan swallowed. Because this isn't part of the official grid. It's outside the mapped perimeter. Atlas suddenly slowed, nose to the ground. He sniffed the dirt intensely before letting out a soft whine. Then he moved again, faster this time, pulling them deeper until the trees opened into a small clearing. Sarah stopped, breath catching. The clearing was eerily silent, untouched, except for a set of faint footprints in the mud. Tiny ones. Her knees buckled. Jonathan, Emma's footprints. These are Emma's. He held her as she shook, but Atlas didn't stop. He barked sharply and sprinted toward the far end of the clearing where thick vines draped over something. Something wooden. What is that? Jonathan whispered. They stepped closer, shining the flashlight. Atlas pawed at the ground, barking furiously, scratching at the vines. Beneath them was a structure, a large drainage tunnel entrance, old, rusted, covered almost entirely by roots and leaves. This wasn't on the map, Jonathan said. And none of the officers mentioned it, Sarah added. Atlas scratched harder, desperate, as if trying to dig his way inside. He growled, not in aggression, but in urgency, pleading for them to hurry. Jonathan leaned closer. A faint rhythmic sound echoed from deep within the tunnel. Tap, tap, tap. Sarah froze. Jonathan, do you hear that? His face turned pale. Yes. Tap, tap, tap. Atlas backed away, whining loudly, nudging them toward the entrance. Jonathan whispered, voice trembling, someone is inside. And Atlas's eyes said the rest. Follow me now. The entrance to the drainage tunnel yawned open like the mouth of something ancient. Rusted metal teeth, damp concrete walls, stale air drifting outward with a low, hollow hiss. Sarah instinctively grabbed Jonathan's arm. Atlas didn't hesitate. He stood at the tunnel mouth, paws planted firmly in the mud, body stiff and alert. His ears were pinned forward, his eyes locked onto the darkness inside. And then that sound again. Tap tap tap. Soft, weak, faint, but unmistakably human. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "That's not an animal, Jonathan." "That's not, I know," he whispered, pulse hammering. Atlas barked sharply, stepping backward as if pushing them toward the entrance. But then something unexpected happened. He stopped, wed, and refused to go inside. Jonathan frowned. Why won't he enter? Atlas looked up at him with eyes that seemed to speak a language deeper than words. Fear, urgency, warning. His body quivered, not from exhaustion, but from something else. Something inside the tunnel that even a trained police K-9 didn't want to face. Sarah's voice trembled. "If he's scared, what's in there?" The tapping sound came again, slower this time. Tap tap. A tap, followed by a faint, broken whimper. Sarah gasped. "Jonathan. Emma whimpers like that when she's scared. That's her. That has to be her." Jonathan stepped closer to the entrance, shining the flashlight into the tunnel. The beam stretched down a long corridor, revealing nothing but dripping water and slick concrete. Atlas barked again, but this time it wasn't a command. It was a plea. He paced around Jonathan anxiously, brushing against his legs, trying to pull him back from the edge. "He doesn't want us going in," Sarah whispered. "No," Jonathan said, shaking his head. "He doesn't want us going in alone." Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived with flashlights and gear. Martinez crouched beside Atlas, furrowing his brow. "I've worked with him for years. I've never seen him like this. He's alerting and warning at the same time." An officer stepped forward. "Probably just raccoons or something down there." Atlas growled, a deep, sharp, threatening sound that made the officer freeze. Jonathan's voice was stern. "That wasn't an animal. Someone is tapping from inside. And if Atlas is reacting like this, it's serious." Martinez nodded. "We'll check." Two officers entered the tunnel cautiously, flashlights sweeping the walls. Atlas wed constantly, pacing in frantic circles. Then from deep within the tunnel, one of the officers shouted, "There's something back here." Atlas barked violently. Sarah's knees weakened. Jonathan's heart stopped. The truth was starting to surface. And none of them were prepared for what lay further inside. A violent storm swallowed the sky that night. Lightning cracked through the darkness, illuminating the trees in jagged flashes. The wind howled against the house, rattling the windows and shaking the branches like skeletal hands clawing at the glass. Jonathan and Sarah sat together on the couch, neither speaking, both staring into the storm as if searching for answers in the chaos. The police officers had returned to the station hours earlier, promising to resume the underground search in the morning. But something didn't sit right. Something pulsed in Sarah's chest like a warning drum. Then at 7:14 p.m. exactly, a sound erupted through the storm. Bang! Bang! Scratch! Jonathan shot to his feet. No way! Not in this weather. Sarah's eyes widened with dread. She rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain. Atlas stood outside in the torrential rain, soaked, mud-covered, chest heaving, eyes wild with urgency. He slammed his paws against the glass again, barking over the thunder with a desperation that shook the entire living room. "What is he doing out here alone?" Sarah cried. Before she could open the window, headlights flashed across the yard. Officer Martinez stumbled through the rain toward them. His jacket half soaked, hair plastered to his forehead. He yelled over the storm. He escaped again, broke out of the station, jumped the fence, hurtled straight for your house. Atlas barked sharply at Martinez, then barked again at Jonathan, then spun toward the woods, running several steps before stopping and looking back. He wasn't hiding his message anymore. Follow me now. Lightning flashed again, and in that split-second burst of white light, Jonathan saw something chilling. Atlas wasn't just barking. He was shaking, trembling violently. Not in fear, in urgency. Sarah grabbed her coat, tears already forming. He's trying to tell us something is happening right now. Atlas sprinted toward the woods, slipping in the mud, but refusing to stop. He looked back at them repeatedly, eyes wide and pleading. Jonathan turned to Martinez. Call your team. Tell them we're going back to that tunnel tonight. Martinez hesitated. In this storm, it's too dangerous. Atlas barked in his face. Loud, sharp, furious. It wasn't just a bark. It was a scream. Sarah stepped forward, determination burning through her fear. My daughter is out there, and he knows something. I'm not waiting until morning. Atlas barked again, sprinting into the storm. Jonathan grabbed a flashlight. Sarah followed. Martinez, cursed, shouted into his radio and ran after them. The storm swallowed their silhouettes as they entered the trees. Atlas led them with relentless speed, and with every flash of lightning, Jonathan and Sarah saw the same truth. Something was happening in that tunnel tonight, and they were running out of time. The storm raged like a living creature, tearing branches from trees and soaking the earth into thick, sucking mud. But Atlas didn't slow, not for the wind, not for the thunder, not for the darkness. He pushed forward through the forest with frantic determination, glancing back every few seconds to make sure Sarah and Jonathan were still following. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating his soaked fur and the fierce resolve in his eyes. Finally, the dog skidded to a stop at the clearing, the same clearing where they had found Emma's small footprints. Only tonight, something was different. The vines that once concealed the entrance to the drainage tunnel had been disturbed. Some were ripped. Others were freshly torn, hanging like shredded ropes. The storm alone couldn't have done that. Someone had been here. Sarah gripped Jonathan's arm. Oh, God. Please let her be alive. Atlas sprinted to the side of the clearing, barking furiously at a mound of wet leaves piled unnaturally at the base of a crooked tree. He clawed at them wildly until his paw struck something solid. Thud. Jonathan rushed forward, heart racing. Atlas scraped faster, digging mud and roots aside until a wooden surface emerged beneath the debris. A wooden plank drenched from the storm, rimmed with rusted metal hinges, a hidden door. Help me! Jonathan shouted. Together, they cleared the rest of the covering. Sarah gasped when the last layer peeled away. It wasn't a simple board. It was a trap door, old, heavy, camouflaged perfectly with dirt, leaves, and vines. No wonder the search teams missed it. No drone could have detected it. It blended seamlessly into the forest floor. Atlas threw himself at the door, scratching with a feverish intensity. His claws scraped grooves into the wood until splinters flew. Officer Martinez arrived seconds later, panting. What is that? A hidden entrance, Jonathan said. Atlas found it. Without another word, Martinez knelt and yanked the rusted metal ring embedded in the plank. It didn't move. Atlas barked. A deep, furious bark that echoed through the trees, demanding, insisting, begging them to hurry. Jonathan gripped the ring beside Martinez. Sarah joined in, pushing her shoulder under the edge for leverage. Together, they pulled. The hinges groaned like a dying beast. Rust cracked. Wood splintered. The door lifted inch by inch until a rush of cold, foul-smelling air burst upward from the darkness below. Sarah gagged. What? What is that smell? Martinez shone his flashlight into the opening. A narrow ladder descended into a concrete room. An underground chamber hidden beneath the forest. Atlas whed loudly, scratching the dirt, sniffing the air, tail trembling with fear and hope all at once. Sarah's voice shook. Jonathan, someone's been living under here. Lightning struck again, and this time the thunder didn't drown out the sound rising from the trapdoor. A weak trembling cry. Small, faint, human. Atlas barked, explosive, desperate. She's down there. Martinez didn't wait. He climbed down the rusted ladder first, flashlight trembling in his hand. Jonathan followed, heart pounding against his ribs so hard it hurt. Sarah stayed at the opening, too terrified to move until Atlas growled softly, nudging her leg with a trembling urgency. He wanted her to go. He needed her to go. Sarah swallowed hard and descended into the darkness. The underground room was cold. So cold their breaths fogged the air. Concrete walls, a dirt floor, old crates stacked against one side, a mattress on the ground, and a single flickering bulb hanging from a wire, casting shadows that crawled across the walls like ghosts. Then Jonathan's flashlight swept across something tiny in the corner. A small figure curled up, shaking. Sarah froze halfway down the ladder, her voice breaking. Emma. The little body stirred, a faint, terrified whimper. Jonathan ran across the room so fast he stumbled. Emma, baby, it's Daddy. The girl flinched at the noise, pressing herself against the wall as if expecting pain. But when the light hit her face, Sarah collapsed to her knees. It was Emma, fragile, pale, her hair matted, cheeks sunken, tiny wrists scraped from struggling. She was wrapped in a dirty blanket, hugging it to her chest as though it were a shield. Her voice cracked into a whisper. Daddy. Jonathan's soul shattered. He gathered her into his arms, holding her tight, so tight, as if afraid she might disappear again. Emma's small arms wrapped weakly around his neck, trembling, desperate for warmth and safety. Sarah rushed to them, tears streaming uncontrollably as she pulled Emma into her embrace. Mommy's here, baby. Mommy's here. I'm here. I'm here. Emma sobbed softly into her mother's shoulder. But then a small detail made Sarah's blood run cold. Emma whispered, voice shaking. The man said he'd come back tonight. Martinez stiffened. What man? Emma. What man? Emma pointed a weak, trembling finger toward the ladder. He lives up there in the woods. Sarah turned pale. Jonathan's grip tightened protectively around his daughter. Martinez barked into his radio, calling for immediate backup. But Emma wasn't done. Eyes wide with fear. She whispered one more sentence. But I wasn't alone. Jonathan froze. What do you mean, sweetheart? Emma's bottom lip quivered. She lifted her hand, tiny, shaking, and pointed behind the crates. Atlas suddenly growled deep in warning, the fur on his spine rising. Martinez shone his flashlight in the direction Emma pointed, and the beam landed on something that made every drop of blood drain from their faces. Another blanket, another small shape, another child. This nightmare wasn't over. Not even close. For a moment, no one moved. The storm rumbled above, but down in that hidden underground room, everything was still, frozen in terror. Martinez swallowed hard and stepped toward the small shape behind the crates. Atlas growled low, his instincts razor-sharp, tail stiff as a rod. Martinez lifted the blanket. A second child, dirty, frightened, eyes wide with terror, flinched at the light. A little boy, maybe 7 years old. Sarah gasped. Jonathan's breath caught. Emma clung tighter to her mother, whispering. He cried a lot. I told him we'd be okay. I told him Atlas would find us. Jonathan's heart twisted. She believed in the dog even when trapped underground. Martinez wrapped the shaking child in his jacket. We need medics now. He spoke into his radio, voice sharp and urgent, calling for immediate rescue units. But there was something gnawing at Jonathan's mind. Emma said someone was coming back tonight. He looked at Martinez, eyes narrowing. Someone who lives near here. Close. Martinez nodded grimly. And someone who knows this forest better than anyone. Atlas barked sharply, snapping everyone's attention. He ran to the ladder and growled up at the opening, ears pinned, fur raised, teeth bared. Someone was up there. Heavy footsteps echoed above them through the storm-soaked soil. Sarah froze. Oh God, he came back. Martinez shoved Sarah and the children behind Jonathan. Stay down. Don't move. He climbed halfway up the ladder. Flashlight pointed upward, gun, the beam sliced through the rain and landed directly on a figure standing at the edge of the trapdoor. A man, tall, soaked from the storm. Eyes wild and furious. Jonathan's face went pale. Wait, that's our neighbor. Martinez's grip tightened. Sir, don't move. But the neighbor didn't step back. Instead, he smirked a slow, twisted curl of the lips. You should have stayed out of this, he hissed. Atlas launched upward in a violent fury, barking so aggressively the entire forest seemed to shake. The man stumbled back from the force of it, slipping on the wet leaves. Martinez climbed out, locking the man in place with the gun's barrel. Backup arrived seconds later. Sirens cutting through the storm as officers swarmed the clearing. The neighbor tried to run, tried to escape, tried to disappear into the woods he knew so well. But Atlas tackled him before he made it 2 steps, pinning him to the ground with a rage no one had ever seen in the dog before. Handcuffs snapped shut. Martinez exhaled deeply. We found our abductor. Sarah hugged Emma tighter as tears of relief streamed down her face. But Emma whispered one more thing. I told you, Mommy. Atlas always knew. And for the first time in 14 days, Sarah finally believed it. The dog had been right from the very beginning. The storm finally passed by morning. The forest, once terrifying and shadowed, now glistened with soft sunlight filtering through the branches. Rainwater dripped gently from the leaves and birds slowly returned to their perches as if the world itself was exhaling after a nightmare. Medics rushed Emma and the young boy into waiting ambulances. Sarah never let go of her daughter's hand, not for a second. She sat beside her, brushing mud from her hair, whispering prayers of gratitude through tears that didn't seem to stop. Jonathan stood outside the ambulance, watching his family with trembling relief. The last 2 weeks had aged him years, but now the weight on his shoulders was lifting. Martinez approached him quietly. She's stable, weak, dehydrated, but the doctor says she's a fighter. Jonathan nodded, swallowing hard. She always has been. Atlas trotted over, exhausted, soaked, fur-matted with mud and leaves. But his eyes, those fierce, intelligent eyes, were warm and gentle now. The urgency, the panic, the desperation that drove him night after night had finally broken into peace. Sarah stepped out of the ambulance, kneeling beside Atlas. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she placed both hands on his face. "You saved her," she whispered. "You saved my baby." Atlas leaned into her touch, closing his eyes, letting out a soft exhale as if he'd been holding his breath since the moment Emma disappeared. Jonathan knelt beside them, voice tight with emotion. "Thank you, boy. You didn't give up. Not even when everyone else did." Atlas wagged his tail weakly, pressing his head into Jonathan's chest. A hero, worn out, but victorious. Later that afternoon, when the sun hung warm and golden over the hospital parking lot, doctors came out with the update they'd been praying for. "Both children are safe." Sarah broke into tears again, this time tears of joy. Atlas barked once, soft, proud, as if announcing to the world that his mission was complete. As night settled in, the family stood under the hospital lights, holding Emma close while officers led Atlas to the back seat of the patrol SUV. He paused, turning his head one last time toward the girl he fought so hard to save. Emma lifted her tiny hand and whispered, "Atlas, you're my angel." The dog's tail thumped gently. Jonathan looked into the camera because by then reporters had gathered, capturing this incredible moment, and spoke words that later went viral. "If your heart tells you something is wrong, listen. If someone needs help, act. And never underestimate what a dog's instinct can save. Because in the end, a child was rescued, a truth was uncovered, and a dog against all odds became a hero the world will never forget."